If you want to better understand what's going on with healthcare, Digital Health Review is the podcast that brings relevancy into the health technology conversation. Digital Health Review presents stories of health equity and technology, as well as actionable advice and news at the intersection of digital health, public health, and health equity. I'm Blair Hurst, your resident Black health tech nerd and host. In this episode, we talk about consumer trust and who we're really building for. Our guest today is Dr. Sara Chokshi. Sara is a health service delivery researcher and digital health strategist with expertise in health informatics, user-centered design, and implementation science, currently serving as the Director of Research at HITLAB. She is committed to improving the experience of patients and clinicians through the creation, evaluation, and implementation of novel, evidence-based digital health solutions. Let's get started. I'm so excited to dive in. So let's start from the beginning. How did you get started in research? And can you tell me a little bit about the work you're doing at HITLAB?
Sure, yeah. So I got started in research. I'm a sociologist by training. I did a sociology undergrad degree, and then once I finished and was trying to figure out how to support myself in life, decided to get an MPH, and this was kind of a long time ago now, back in the mid to late 90s, and schools of public health weren't as there weren't as many of them as there are now. There weren't public health programs like there are now. So I was in Florida at the time and decided to go to University of South Florida, their School of Public Health, because it was the only one that was in state. And so I did that. I really loved it, because I'd always been interested in the sociology of health and illness. And so while I was there, I was working as a research assistant they have a big mental health research institute there. So that was my first kind of foray into research, and also, health service delivery. And I kind of right away, found myself there. I really enjoyed it and decided, this is what I want to do, and decided to, pursue a terminal degree. And I was going to stay there, but in part of my work, my boss at the research institute was heading up their Doctor of Public Health program. And again, this was like a kind of a new degree at the time, a DrPH. And he had tasked me with researching all of the DrPH programs around the country. Where are they? What are they consisting of? What, how are people doing there? What are they doing with their degrees? And in part of that work, I discovered Columbia's program. So Mailman School of Public Health had a really unique program where you got your Doctor of Public Health, but you were able to combine it with a social science of your choice. And so I kind of last minute decided, wow, this is perfect. I can sort of combine my sociology and public health. So I ended up doing that. I moved to New York, and this was 2000, and did a Doctor of Public Health in the socio-medical sciences. I used to say my field is mental health, but really, all along, it's really been about sort of healthcare delivery, and that's kind of who I, what I love, what I am at my core. Not just what are the treatments that we have to offer, and how are we able to diagnose patients, but what's that patient experience, and understanding that, and figuring out how to make it better. And kind of went really deep into this idea of patient-centered care, which, as I got involved in more digital design projects related to healthcare, became my focus, which continues to be my focus now, which is user-centered design in digital health. And really focused on how do we incorporate digital technologies to support the healthcare experience for patients. But I was, as I was going to say, more and more for me, also focusing on the clinician experience and sort of all the other people involved in delivering healthcare. And I've been back in my current role as director of research for the past couple of years. And the thing I really like about HITLAB is, as I don't have to tell you, right, healthcare is so complex. And so I think the more that I find for me as a person and someone who's interested in innovation and what's next, being able to kind of have your toe in a little bit everywhere sort of gives this depth, and not just depth of experience, but breadth of experience that I feel like enables me to think more creatively and more out of the box about sort of all of the different areas that need to come along and move along, to really not just make tweaks, but to really kind of contribute to the bigger changes that need to happen.
One of the things I also was really intrigued that you said was just, the ability to have the depth and the breadth, because you dipped your foot into a variety of things, being able to then to bring creativity to the problem solving of some of the healthcare issues. And I resonate with that a lot. I've done clinical research, I've done telehealth, I've done patient engagement, I've done sort of data and analytics, I've done post-acute care. There's the benefit of that is that you do understand the ecosystem in a way that perhaps someone who has focused on one single vertical may not be able to quite understand. And then being able to tie in the benefits of all those things and the challenges of all those things into the solution for some of these healthcare issues. So I love that part. I'm curious though, HITLAB is doing a lot, right? And HITLAB does have the thought leadership, does connect people together to continue to have conversations around the challenges of healthcare. You work heavily with early stage companies that are in the digital health space and that could benefit from some research. One of the things that I'm currently discussing is consumer trust in digital health.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of technical solutions out there around what to do next in digital health. And I still think there's a fundamental miss around trying to solve for trust. And I know that's a very huge problem, but I think when we look at what consumers are telling us around using digital health tools or even just working in healthcare or working with healthcare providers, it's a matter of, do I fundamentally trust you to take care of me?
Mm-hmm.
Do I fundamentally trust you to deliver the outcomes that your solution is saying that it's going to do? And so clinical validation is a very big part of that. And so I'm curious to get some insight into what you sort of see as some of the challenges in conducting research for these early stage companies.
Yeah, no, I mean, and a few things pop into my head, and I think, in talking about consumer trust, I think, that's a deep well of stuff there, right? And, the first thing I think of is, well, what's the reason? And there are so many reasons not to trust, frankly, whether it's because historically, particular groups have been mistreated, both intentionally and, because of just lack of kind of insight and attention. Then there's, maybe a mistrust of technology, which I think is a problem both for many patients, but also a huge problem with clinicians who've been tortured with technology up to now, just really ruined their lives, frankly. So why should they want us to deliver them some new whatever? And why is this going to be different than all the other, time consuming, not useful crap that I don't have time to learn to use, in addition to all the other tools I already have and am being forced to use that don't really help me with my job. So I think I think it's important for us, when I say us, like you, people like you and me, to help specify what what's the problems we're trying to solve in terms of trust. Um, and it's interesting. I think of it. I I was I've been doing a lot of more and more projects, and I'm particularly interested in kind of the possibilities of remote monitoring. Um, and as I hear you say that, I think part of the reason I really like the idea of remote monitoring is, it's funny because if you talk to a clinician about it, in fact, I was at a workshop not that long ago, and the clinician on the team, as we're like going through this ideation session, is like, you know, they just want to be able to give the attention that they want to give and that they feel they need to give to the patients who really need it. And it's not that they want to sort of write off everybody else. It's just there's just too much to do, and us providing them more and more data is not at this point helpful yet. Right. So I think as people who are responsible for creating new things and vetting new things and doing the research on new things, I think we have to keep bringing this up. I don't even think that, like, I don't feel like, and I'm not a technologist. I'm a sociologist by training. I'd never claimed to be like a super deep technology person in a million years. But from what I've seen, from what I understand, I think we have a lot of great technology already. It's awesome. Sorry about the background noise. But like, we're not doing I think we really need to pay attention to the human part of this. Are we meeting the needs? And I'm just saying all this to say that I think in order to I think the best thing we can focus on right now, I mean, among other things, in order to really solve for this concern about consumer trust, is to build things that really have at the forefront clinician trust, right? And really supporting clinicians in being there for their patients. That's what patients really want. They want to know this person is paying attention to me. They're going to be there for me when I need. I feel, safe. I feel cared for. And, I often, even in my own circles, professionally, often hear clinicians' needs and patients' needs talked about as if it's a trade-off, as if it's sort of somehow in opposition to one another. And I think that's so unhelpful. I think that we really need the solutions that we've come up with so far, oftentimes are with these great intentions of patient-centered care, as they should, but without considering, the impact of the data, the impact of using this on the clinician workflow and just healthcare workers' workflow, and enabling them to better do their job. We're sort of really leaving out this huge piece of the puzzle, that will enable them to behave in a way that garners consumer trust. Because at the end of the day, they need the tools they need to take great care and be there when they need to be there and be available when they need to be available. And so, that only happens when we start making these tools that enable them rather than kind of bogging them down.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't heard a conversation around consumer trust brought up in the way that you just brought it up, as far as solving for provider trust first. And I think there's a lot there, because it is very much akin to the conversation of we're building a lot of digital health tools for patients, but how are we supporting caregivers, which we know are wholly underserved, but do a lot of the work of care for patients? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know,
And
it's it's the delivery model, right? It's the delivery method of care. You could be so tunnel vision around the end user that you forget about the stakeholders that have to deliver the service to get to the end user. And if you can't support them, then you ultimately can't support the end user, which in this case is the patients. And I haven't heard that perspective, and I think you're on to something there. And I think that's definitely probably an angle that folks need to focus on a little bit more. Um, but I also know that a lot of the digital health companies these days are still going through this like D2C route, right? They're going straight to the market, and they're trying to show consumers that they're listening to them, that they're making tools for them to solve their needs in an easy, reliable way they can, access in their homes, that they're doing it with cultural competency, with providers that look like them, et cetera. And the thing that they're all striving for also is clinical validation, or showing that they can also bring outcomes to these patients. And the conversations that I've had with a lot of these founders and companies is that it's a slog for them. It's extremely tough to figure out where to start with that process, and there's a lot of challenges for them. And so I'm curious, if you were to give a recommendation for a company that was looking for clinical research to get through that clinical validation, like what are like 3 top things would you recommend they do to sort of cross that hurdle?
yeah, no, it's a great question. And, I think, I think I don't want to make it seem like, I don't want to make it all, make it seem at all like I don't sort of appreciate that focus. I feel like it's only because we can now work on the backs of all the people who have been focusing on consumers, and, as you said, sort of meeting them in ways that, historically have just been kind of pitiful in terms of, really focusing on patients day to day, on cultural competency, on care in the community and care at home, all that kind of stuff. I think startups, the main thing I see, startups don't understand. Startups are really in a tough spot if they haven't from early on considered, like, again, what does real healthcare look like? So it might be really great. It could be, a B2C product that, even if it's something that patients love, and feel comfortable with and trust, I think it depends kind of on what it is. But at the end of the day, if there's a component of care where it needs to plug into the system, and whether that's exchange of data or communication or something, and it doesn't fit in with real world healthcare, it's just not gonna, right? It's not gonna diffuse. It'll sort of be this kind of great idea that sort of lives off on its own, but never quite takes off because it doesn't plug into care. And that could be just like the workflow. It could be from a reimbursement perspective. I think that really, I think startups really need to think through not just how great this is, and not even just the clinical validation from a, outcomes point of view, that, they used our program for 8 weeks and lowered their, A1C, this many points, but validate it from a, there was a health system, a clinic that used it for, X amount of time, and they were able to use it. And this is how they, financially made it possible, or even, better yet, worth their while. And, this is what clinicians said about it. They said it saved them time. It enabled them to better utilize, other healthcare professionals, so that they, save their times for the patients who had more serious, needs or something like that. Does that make sense? I think understanding how you expect it to fit, or if you don't expect it to fit. And if you don't expect it to fit, be clear about that, and be clear about why, and be clear about how it's going to work. So you're going to collect all this data for your patient. Are you expecting your patient to print that out and take it to their clinician? Are you expecting the clinician to review it at an appointment? Just sort of really detail out what are those assumptions that you have, and then be honest with yourself and get some, validation from, again, kind of stakeholders involved about, is this realistic? Does this work? Is this a value proposition, for all involved? Now, I'd say that's the biggest thing. And I'm like a broken record when it comes to that, so it's better yet, have a clinician or a potential user, as an advisor who can tell you, well, this would definitely work, in my system, and here's why. This would definitely not work. And here's why, and here's what you might do differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would echo that advice, especially for the digital health companies that are founded by non-traditional healthcare folks. So folks who haven't been in healthcare, but maybe been in technology for a long time. The physician leadership, at a minimum, advisor role is extremely important. And so I definitely echo that as well.
Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter, shop the latest digital health products, or listen to more episodes, please go to www.digitalhealthreview.com.